Imagine carrying a 100-pound weight on your back for like 40 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds completely exhausting.
Right. And you just completely refuse to let anyone help you carry it. You
Uh,
won't even acknowledge it's there.
Even though your knees are, literally buckling under you.
Exactly. Your posture is completely warped. You're in pain. And, well, as a society, we look at that and we just call it stubborn.
We do. We judge it pretty harshly, actually.
But what if putting that weight down actually felt vastly more dangerous to you than carrying it?
That changes the whole picture.
It really does. So welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking a look at a dynamic you have probably witnessed in your own life.
Definitely.
We're talking about the intense, honestly, almost baffling resistance that so many men have to seeking therapy.
Yeah, and it is a dynamic that creates immense frustration for families, for partners, and honestly, for the men themselves.
For sure, because they're suffering too.
Right. But we have this cultural narrative that just treats men's avoidance of mental health care as a character flaw or like some outdated commitment to just being macho.
And we are going to look right past those surface-level tropes today.
Glad to hear it. It's about time.
To do this, we are diving into a really revealing March 2026 article from Psychology Today by Dr. Sefik Tage.
It's a fantastic piece of research.
It really is. So the mission for us, and for you listening, whether you are trying to understand a colleague, a father, or if you're just, fundamentally curious about human behavior, is to decode the actual psychological survival mechanics at play here.
The survival mechanics, I love that phrasing.
Thanks. Okay, let's unpack this.
All right.
Because the moment we leave our societal assumptions at the door and look at the scientific reality, the entire picture just flips.
It completely flips. And, it flips because society has basically handed us a very judgmental, very short list of reasons why men don't seek help.
Right, the usual suspect.
Exactly. We tell ourselves it is foolish pride. We assume it's this toxic adherence to the boys don't cry mentality.
Or just like an inherent unwillingness to talk.
Yeah. And that paints a picture of a man standing outside a therapist's door, staring at the knob, and simply refusing to turn it out of, I don't know, sheer spite.
Or ignorance. Which implies they're entering the situation neutrally, right? Like they're looking at this clear path to healing and just saying, no thanks.
Right, and they are absolutely not entering therapy as psychologically neutral territory. Not at all.
They're bringing a lot of baggage to that door.
Decades of it. Men carry years, often decades, of intense gender socialization. I mean, from the playground all the way to the boardroom.
So it's deeply ingrained.
Deeply. Boys and men are systematically taught that their fundamental worth is intrinsically tied to staying in control.
Solving problems independently.
Yes, and enduring distress quietly. You just don't complain.
So that socialization essentially builds a very specific kind of psychological architecture.
That's a great way to put it.
And the author introduces a framework to understand that architecture, which is called the Theory of Universal Psychological Basic Needs, or TUPG for short.
Right, TUPG.
I want to spend some time here because this theory really feels like the key to understanding the resistance. So how exactly does TUPG function in this context?
Well, think of TUPG like the mind's psychological immune system.
Okay, an immune system.
Yeah. Just as your physical immune system will ruthlessly attack a foreign entity to preserve your biological health, your mind will reject situations that threaten its structural integrity.
That makes total sense.
According to this theory, every single human being relies on core psychological needs to maintain their internal stability. Things like autonomy, dignity, competence, belonging, safety, and meaning.
So when those needs are met, we function well.
Exactly. But when they are threatened, our defenses activate immediately.
So applying that to our topic, men don't avoid therapy because they aren't in pain. They avoid it because the traditional model of therapy actively threatens those exact load-bearing pillars of their psychological stability.
What's fascinating here is that avoidance is an active defense mechanism.
It's not passive.
No, not at all. When a man avoids sitting on a therapist's couch, he is not saying, I don't hurt. He is saying, the cure you are offering me feels like it will destroy the very foundation I stand on.
I mean, I understand the self-preservation angle, but I have to push back here on behalf of anyone who has ever, urged a man to go to therapy.
Fair enough. Go ahead.
Isn't taking charge of your mental health the ultimate act of autonomy? Like, if you are struggling, realizing it, and hiring an expert to help you fix it, why do they view that as surrendering control rather than seizing it?
It's a great question. And from the outside, yeah, it looks like seizing control.
Right.
But look at the actual mechanics of traditional therapy from the perspective of someone whose autonomy is tied to complete self-reliance.
Okay, walk me through it.
You walk into a waiting room, you fill out a clipboard of forms detailing all your flaws.
Ugh, yeah, the paperwork.
Right. Then you sit in a room across from an expert who holds all the authority, and you are expected to passively receive their diagnosis and their guidance.
Oh, I see. It is an inherently asymmetrical power dynamic.
Exactly. You're the patient, they are the doctor.
It's like a ship's captain.
A ship's captain.
Yeah, imagine a captain who has navigated his vessel through violent storms, thick fog, treacherous waters his entire life.
Right.
He is the one at the helm. That is his entire identity.
Okay, I follow you.
Suddenly, he hits a storm he just can't handle, and the solution he's offered is to step away from the wheel, sit in the passenger seat, and let a total stranger steer his ship.
Wow. Yeah.
That doesn't feel like a helping hand to him. It feels like a total loss of agency.
That analogy perfectly captures the internal crisis, because traditional masculinity heavily rewards being the captain in the storm.
The guy steering the ship.
Exactly. Autonomy in that socialization basically means I do it myself.
Mhm.
So the clinical environment of therapy just feels like dependency,
It feels like being told what to do.
which is a direct violation of their need for autonomy.
Well, if stepping into the therapist's office strips away their autonomy right at the door, what happens when they actually sit down and start talking?
It gets worse, honestly.
Because it feels like their dignity takes the next direct hit.
It does. Dignity is incredibly fragile in this clinical environment. The article asks us to imagine a man who has spent 40 years being the rock.
40 years, that's a lifetime.
Right. 4 decades of being the one his kids rely on, his partner leans on, his colleagues turn to in a crisis.
His entire self-concept is built on being the provider of support.
Exactly. So to suddenly flip a switch and become the one who needs the support,
That is a massive psychological whiplash.
it really is. It brings up this unspoken fear of humiliation. We talk about the stigma of mental health as this, abstract societal concept.
Like a buzzword.
Yeah. But for the individual man, it is deeply, terrifyingly personal. It forces a confrontation with a really dark question. If I admit I am struggling, will I be reclassified? Will my family see me as weak? Will my partner see me as unstable or incapable?
Will I be less of a man in my own eyes?
Exactly.
It's not just treating a symptom. It's the fear of a fundamental downgrade in their status.
The downgrade, yes.
And this internal fear of being seen as inadequate leads us right into the next major threat to their psychological immune system.
Which is the need for competence.
Right. Competence.
Competence is the need to feel capable and effective in dealing with your environment. And therapy, by its very definition, requires an admission that something in your life has outpaced your ability to manage it.
It's like asking a career firefighter to call 911 because his own kitchen is on fire.
That's exactly what it feels like.
It's not just about admitting a mistake was made. It's a fundamental crisis of his professional and personal identity.
Right. Admitting they can't fix themselves is psychologically agonizing for someone whose worth is so tied up in solving and performing.
So what happens inside their head?
It triggers a really harsh internal interrogation. They ask themselves, why can't I handle this? I've handled everything else. Why do I need professional help for my own mind?
You know, if you are listening to this and wondering why your partner suddenly decided to work 80-hour weeks right after a major family loss,
Oh, yes.
or why a friend started drinking heavily after a career setback, this is why.
This is exactly why.
The source gives really clear examples of how men cope to avoid that terrible admission of incompetence. They overwork.
They numb out with substances.
Or, very commonly, they convert all that internal distress into external anger and irritability.
Yes. Anger is a particularly revealing coping mechanism in this context.
How so?
Well, when a man feels depression or anxiety creeping in, those emotions feel passive. They make you feel small. They completely drain your energy.
They feel like weakness.
Exactly. But anger, on the other hand, raises your heart rate. It mobilizes you. It actually feels proactive and powerful.
Here's where it gets really interesting. They're using anger to artificially inflate their sense of competence.
Being angry feels like you are doing something about the problem, even if the problem is completely internal.
And here is the tragic paradox Dr. Tage highlights in the text. These coping strategies, The 80-hour work weeks, the isolation, the anger, they are incredibly costly.
To their physical health, their relationships.
But in the short term, they work.
They work.
They preserve a temporary illusion of functioning. They basically keep that competence pillar propped up just a little longer.
Wow.
The heartbreaking reality is that these men do want relief, but therapy threatens to rip away that illusion.
So therapy might actually initially intensify the exact feeling they are desperately running from.
Precisely.
You walk into therapy and suddenly you are staring unblinkingly at the fact that you aren't coping at all. You feel worse before you feel better.
You feel totally exposed, which transitions us to the immense social reality of all this.
Right, because this doesn't just happen in a vacuum. No. It threatens the needs for belonging and safety. Because therapy requires emotional openness. And for many men, vulnerability is essentially a massive social gamble.
Let's talk about that gamble.
Yeah.
Because society constantly claims it wants men to open up.
We hear it all the time.
We see the campaigns, the hashtags, constantly encouraging men to talk about their feelings. But have these men ever actually seen male vulnerability received with genuine care and respect in their real day-to-day lives?
The historical and frankly practical answer for most men is no.
No.
The world tells them to take off their armor, but the moment they do, they are frequently handed a penalty.
What kind of penalty?
They are met with visible discomfort from their peers, maybe a subtle loss of respect at work, or even romantic rejection from partners who consciously want a sensitive man, but subconsciously react negatively to male fragility.
So the rulebook says be open, but the reality on the ground actively punishes them for it.
Exactly, it's a double
Yeah.
bind.
If a man's entire self-story and his place in his community is built around being the unshakable protector, therapy literally threatens his belonging.
Yes. Asking him to explore what he has carried alone or what traumas he hasn't grieved, it risks isolating him from the very group he belongs to.
It's asking someone to dismantle their entire identity without any guarantee that a new one will be accepted.
And without safety and belonging, the psychological structure just collapses.
So if the traditional setup of therapy inherently triggers all these internal alarms, threatening autonomy, dignity, competence, belonging, and safety, we can't just keep telling men to get over their pride.
No, we can't, because the system itself is triggering their psychological immune response.
We can't just yell at the ship's captain to sit down and shut up. We have to adapt.
We have to change the approach entirely.
So what does this all mean for the future of mental health? How do we actually make therapy a viable, non-threatening option?
It means we have to completely rewrite the rules of engagement.
Okay, I'm listening.
Dr. Tegay's article outlines specific, actionable changes that mental health professionals, and frankly all of us, can make to protect these core needs rather than attacking them.
Let's go through them. Start with autonomy.
To protect a man's need for agency, therapists must use collaborative goal setting and shared decision-making from minute one of the very first session.
So replacing the asymmetrical power dynamic.
Yes, no more doctor knows best dictation.
It shouldn't feel like therapy is being done to him. It should feel like he hired a consultant. He
Exactly.
keeps his hands on the wheel. He's just bringing in a navigator to help him read the map of the storm.
I love that. The therapist might literally say, you are the expert on your own life. What do you want to tackle first, and how should we measure success?
It immediately restores his status as the active agent in his own healing.
Right. Second, we must address dignity and competence. This requires a radical reframing of what therapy actually is. We have to stop talking about it as a place to go when you are broken,
How do we frame it instead?
as a tool for psychological effectiveness.
Oh, interesting.
It must be presented as a method to build resilience, to gain mental clarity, and to optimize performance.
Like an upgrade.
Exactly. It is an upgrade to their internal operating system, not a patch for a defect. When therapy is framed as a proactive strategy rather than a reactive surrender, it aligns perfectly with their need to be competent.
That reframing is brilliant. It essentially uses their socialization to help them, rather than fighting against it.
It really does.
What about the social gamble? How do we provide belonging and safety when society still, penalizes male vulnerability?
The text strongly suggests utilizing gender-responsive groups or male peer settings.
Like group therapy specifically for men.
Yes, this is a crucial adaptation because it directly targets that feeling of isolation.
I can see how that works. If you are sitting in a circle with other respected, capable men, maybe a firefighter, a business owner, a dedicated father, and they are being open about their struggles.
It rewrites the social rulebook in real time.
Yeah, it proves that vulnerability does not cancel out strength. It models a completely new way of belonging. When a man sees someone he respects taking off the armor, it provides the safety he needs to take off his own.
He isn't risking his membership in the tribe of men.
No, he is just joining a healthier subset of it.
That makes a lot of sense. So that leaves the final core need in the TUPG framework, which is meaning. I assume this involves connecting the difficult work of therapy to the values they already hold dear.
Meaning is the anchor. Normalizing those early fears of failure is important, but the real work is connecting the therapeutic process to their broader life story.
It can't just be about fixing a problem.
Right, seeking help cannot be framed as a detour or a breakdown.
Give me a concrete example of what that looks like in practice. Like, how do you inject meaning into unpacking decades of repressed anxiety?
Well, a therapist might connect the work directly to a man's role as a father.
Okay.
Instead of saying, we need to fix your anxiety because it's harming you, the framing becomes, we are doing this work so you can walk your daughter down the aisle in 10 years without your anxiety stealing that moment from you.
Wow. That's powerful.
The therapy becomes a deeply meaningful step in his broader mission to be the provider and protector he wants to be.
The therapy serves his identity rather than threatening it.
Exactly.
I want to make sure we synthesize a really vital point from the text here, because there is a trap we could fall into with this.
What's the trap?
Well, this approach is not about catering to toxic behavior. We aren't saying, let's pretend you aren't in therapy so your fragile ego doesn't get bruised.
Oh, not at all. That's a really important distinction. It is about recognizing that you cannot perform surgery on someone without anesthesia.
Right.
The TUPG framework is the anesthesia. It is about offering profound, necessary help in a way that respects the delicate inner balance a person is terrified of losing.
This raises an important question, and it really serves as the ultimate takeaway from Dr. Tege's research. For decades, the mental health field, the media, and society at large have been banging their heads against the wall asking, why won't men seek help?
And that is the wrong question entirely.
It places the blame completely on the individual.
Yes. The better question, the one we must start asking is, how can help be offered in ways that protect the needs men fear losing when they enter therapy?
Right.
As the author notes, that question isn't softer, it is significantly more precise. It demands better from our systems.
It changes the entire paradigm.
Yeah.
And this is where I want to connect all of this back to you, the listener.
Absolutely.
Because understanding the TUPG framework, understanding that a man's avoidance is an attempt to protect his autonomy, his dignity, his competence, and his safety, it gives you a completely new lens.
It shifts our natural response from frustration to compassion.
Yeah.
When you understand the invisible mechanics of their fear, you can change how you extend your hand. You stop arguing with the symptom and start addressing the underlying need for safety.
The next time you look at the men in your own life who are struggling but refusing help, you aren't just seeing a stubborn brick wall anymore.
No, you're seeing the incredibly fragile structure that wall is trying to protect.
Exactly. And I will leave you with a final thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
Let's hear it.
Think about how our society fundamentally operates. We constantly ask men to be the unshakable, load-bearing walls of their families, their workplaces, and their communities.
We really do.
We expect them to hold up the roof no matter how heavy the snow gets. So what does it say about us when we expect them to just dismantle that load-bearing wall to examine the cracks without offering any structural support first?
That's a great point.
If we want them to heal, we have to help them bear the weight. How might you change the way you offer help in your own life, knowing that it's not foolish pride holding them back, but a profound, very human need for survival?